Brandon Wint. You are one of the compliment. I think it's reality.
Okay.
Well, it is a compliment, but I strongly believe that you have a powerful message that will stay with us for centuries.
I hope so. The other day I was thinking about what success would mean as an artist. And I said, I don't know how long I'm going to live, but if you take that number of years and then multiply it by 2, if people are still reading my poetry at that time, so say I live to 80, if people are still reading my poetry, twice that amount, then I guess I will have been successful. So I have a lot of work to do, a lot of years left to live, both in this body and hopefully as a poet, even after I pass. But yeah, I hope I can be a significant part of the lineage of Canadian poetry.
Oh, we need you for a long time.
Okay.
Your poetry is so powerful. I love your poetry. In short verses, you convey such powerful emotions.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, and this is something I teach because I teach poetry classes, and I have for the last few years. One of the most important and powerful things that I learned about the construction of poetry is just how it's grounded, or it needs to be grounded in physicality and in the body. So I like to give people things to see, things to touch, things to smell, and that way there's nothing esoteric, there's nothing inaccessible about engaging with the poetry, because although people have different senses and different sensibilities, everybody who's going to encounter my poetry will have a body, and so the more accessible I can make my poetry by mediating through the senses, the more powerful whatever I write can be. So I think that is how I think about rendering the power of word in poetry.
What is your earliest memory of you creating poetry, even non-verbally?
My earliest memory of me creating poetry. I don't know. I feel like I want to give an esoteric an esoteric answer to that question. I don't know in physical reality what my earliest memory would be, but I think all of us are either either I am a poet or I am a poem, because I think all of us come from a great lineage. We all come from many different stories, and so there's a way of understanding my entire life as a poem or as part of a story. So I don't think any part of my existence, any part of my life to this point, can be divorced from the idea of poetry, and that's even more so the case because I've decided to devote my life to being a poet. So what is my earliest memory of being a poet? You'd have to ask my mother. She knows more of the story than I do. But I would say I've been a poet and a poem the whole time. I think I couldn't tell you what my first poem was necessarily. But I often say that poetry was, or writing and speaking, the combination of writing and speaking, were the first 2 things anybody ever told me I was good at. And I think as a young person, as a person, say in elementary school, it can be sometimes important to have identifiers that let the world know that you have purpose, because children can be cruel, and so if you have neither the self-esteem or the giftedness to say to people, I am beautiful, I am worthy, my life has purpose, and this is why. Sometimes kids can want to step on you or want to demean you. So I think from my earliest schooling, it was apparent to all my teachers and my parents as well that writing and speaking was how I was going to make my way, or state a claim to being special somehow. And I to this point, that's fairly evident. You know?
What poets influence you, or what poet influenced you the most?
People ask me this question a lot. They ask me, who's my favorite poet? I say God first, because, I mean, if you're the architect of all possibilities, you must be a poet, too. But as far as human beings go, I would say the poet who influenced me most deeply as far as understanding how I wanted to go about writing my own poems, at first at least, was Michael Ondaatje. I think in my life and in my art, sensuality is important, and I think Ondaatje is one of the best conveyors or renderers of sensuality in the English language. So what he has is a gift for both like distillation, you know, like, because I think poetry is first about seeing and then about finding a way to describe what you see. So he has a very clear way of seeing, but also a very fluid way of describing that which he can see, you know. So his poetry, to me, has both sweetness and like a fluidness that I wanted to render in my own poetry, you know. His stuff kind of reminds me of like mango juice or like sugar water or something, anything sweet and malleable and fluid. So that quality was one that I've studied as far as trying to incorporate it into my own work. I feel like, as poets go, I feel like I date them. Like, you know, it's like, oh, me and Leonard Cohen, we've been dating for 6 weeks or 6 months. You know, I spend a lot of time with given poets. So let's say for the last, like, 2 years ago, Michael Ondaatje was the person I was with most of the time, you know. Like, I would have his work with me all the time. I would read it when I was writing my own work. Recently, I've been spending a lot of time with Leonard Cohen. What I appreciate about his work and why it works for me, he has an ability to mix like a little bit of a divine sensibility with a very human sensibility. And what I get from that is he's a very humble poet in the sense of like he seems to know or seems to want to know or thirst to know the relationship between his self and like, you know, the more divine realms of
He's
existence.
humble and secluded.
A little bit.
Yeah, you're not.
He's very serious, you know.
Yes. You're not secluded. You like to go out.
I do, definitely. And, I'm a very independent person, so in a certain way, I like to have my own space, my own path, but I get a lot of energy from other human beings. I get a lot of inspiration from being out in the world. I think one thing that is important for artists to know, or has been important for me to realize about myself and about my life, is that art is reflective of our engagement with life, you know? So it helps for me to engage with life often if I want to create life, or if I want to create art, sorry.
You blend two cultures in you. Besides, you were born here, but your mother is of Jamaican?
My father is Jamaican and my mother's from Barbados, yeah.
So have you been to any of these two,
Yeah,
or both?
I've been to both. Yeah.
So what do you feel most?
What do I
Jamaican or?
Oh, you can't ask me that question on camera. No. I think I've inherited a lot from each. I was raised from probably the age of 5 until the age of 14 in my grandparents' house. Like my mother lived with her parents, and so obviously her parents are from Barbados, and so having a sense of that kind of old Barbadian culture gave me a more fluid or a more like sort of conscious or deeply entrenched understanding of what Barbadian sensibility was and what it meant to be a Barbadian person. So obviously I'm distinctly Canadian, but I carry it with me, a little bit of the flavor of Barbados, and Jamaica as well, but differently, because I wasn't raised as consistently in my father's house. My father was around, but the beauty is that while I was raised more so among Barbadian people, my father has a greater capacity to recall his life than my mother. So from my father, I would hear more stories about, oh, when I was in Jamaica, when I was young, this happened and this happened and this happened. Or, my father was, he'll talk about his father or his mother or, things that he remembers from his early life. And so, and he has a deep, deep, deep love and attachment to Jamaica as a place. And so I would say I've gotten less of the cultural sense of what it is to be a Jamaican person, but I understand what it means to love Jamaica and to carry, even if it's faint in some respects. I understand what it is to carry Jamaicanness, or like a love for that place. Yeah. So both cultures have influenced me deeply, and I think I'm speaking the way I'm speaking to you now, but one of the beautiful things about not being totally from Canada is like, it gives me two different dialects in addition to the dialect that I'm speaking now. There's a Jamaican way of speaking, there's a Barbadian way of speaking.
Can you speak both?
I'm not gonna, I won't do that.
How about a little bit of Jamaican?
I won't do it. Just because I don't feel like it's my first language.
Yes.
So I won't speak it because there are people for whom it is their first language. But even having an awareness of the way it sounds and the way it feels and the way different dialects convey different senses or different apprehensions of the world, as a poet, gives me different things to choose from. And it's not that you're going to read my poetry and say, oh, this person is from Barbados. But
I don't think we would know.
No,
Yes.
I don't think you would. But it gives me a sense of the fluidity and the different capacities that language can have. Whereas although one might say like English is the only language I speak, having an awareness of the capacity of different dialects to convey different worldviews is something that perhaps can make poetry more viable or more malleable for me. So it's something I appreciate, I would say. The things that are larger than us. I'll do this poem that is my way of honoring winter, because I feel as though I always say on stage that anything that's that difficult to survive deserves to be written about. And so this is my ode to winter. It's called Home. And it goes like this. I may never smell fresh cinnamon on an Indian woman's brown fingers, or see Guatemalan plums dangle like obsidian earrings on the lobes of rural trees. Nor may I play voyeur to the sun when it hides coyly behind Kenyan mountains. But there are places I know where frost coats the inside of lungs, and all of summer's hornets cannot sting so sharply as one invisible winter wind, where the moon is a dollop of pure honey floating in black tea, and we watch our white breath rise as the night steeps. There may have never been hibiscus flowers parting their red lips as I walked to school as a child, or mangoes dripping fragrance into my city streets. But on nights when I lay my body against the calm, snowed earth, the crests of my flapping arms bring angels to the surface of the land. So there is home for me between the struggle and the magic of each icy breath. Though I may yearn for new places and new things, though my fingers may grope for new textures, though my feet may call for new concrete, new muddied paths, new tones of brown from the bare flesh of the earth, no matter what freshness my senses crave, there will always be a familiarity in the dignity of cold, naked trees and the yearly martyrdom of fallen maple leaves. There is even a place, a certain city, where I do not have to use my birth name, because the streets have watched me grow. The lowering sun has so often cast its glances through my bedroom window. The wind that shuttles between the narrow alleys could tell me stories I've forgotten about myself. It could sing me the lullabies my mother used to sing. And I know that anyone who lives here could become the city's eyes, because we all know the red brick of the buildings. We've all marveled at summer's tulips and the crackling colors of autumn's dying leaves. But only those who fill a place with their passion can find the city's heart. This is the place where I learned how to breathe. How could it not welcome the echoing of my voice? I have given myself to the history of this place that has raised me, and has returned to me the knowledge that all the exotic sounds and shapes of the world may be no greater a blessing to behold than the one pristine, unspoiled snowflake balancing on my hot-blooded finger in a place that is unmistakably my home.
So we are at your favorite place, Wild Oat.
Yeah, one of them, yeah.
This is where you created a lot of your work.
Yeah, I've done a lot of writing here. It has a good combination of good food and good people. And so, yeah, it's inspiring.
And you're vegetarian.
This is true.
Since 2009.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know. I do most of my writing in coffee shops. Just because I find them to be dynamic places. And they're also intergenerational spaces. They're places where you can find children, you can find elders, you can find people of my age as well. And what that does is it gives me a way of seeing mortality and seeing the way people live differently than if I were to do most of my writing at school, for instance, or in my apartment. So it's good. It works.
So what kind of vegetable and fruit you connect the best? Sexually.
I enjoy strawberries.
Very sexual.
I don't know. I enjoy them because, yeah, they're small and they're sweet. I like to think of poems as similar things, you know. Something short, easily digestible, full of nutrients and sweetness. I like mangoes and mango juices because they're sweet, they're thick, textured, and I just like the color as well. I do a lot of my writing here, or I used to do a lot of writing here, especially because of the color of the walls as well. I find it to be a sensuous color, and it reminds me a little bit of mango skins and mango juices. So it works out for me. People who know me well will also know that I eat a lot of sugar. And if I were to understand that sort of emotionally or metaphysically, I think I have a lot of drive towards the sweetness of life. And so, I mean, brownies, cookies, chocolate, you know, lots of fruits.
So your creativity revolves around this sexual energy.
At this point in my life, I would say so. Yeah. I wouldn't say it always has, but these days.
So do you like women who taste like strawberries and mango?
I think that would be nice. If I were to be honest, I think.
Oh, your mango.
Yeah, my mango smoothie has arrived. Yeah.
Yes. So you like women like mango or like strawberries?
I would say if I were to be honest, I enjoy, just scents. I enjoy humans to smell like humans. So I don't need you to smell or taste like a mango.
So I can smell like anything. And you would like me.
Yeah, I'm not talking about you. Can't do that. But just I really enjoy the human experience of intimacy. So whatever strikes me as being intimate and human will probably give me whatever I'm looking for.
So when you touch food, what kind of texture inspires you or arouses you?
Interesting question. Ooh-wee. I don't know. I think it depends on the day. It depends what I'm trying to write that day. Like something like this works for me because a mango, or rather mango juice, like a mango smoothie like this, it has sweetness to it, but it's not an overwhelming sweetness. It's not. It's a layered sweetness. It's not just sweetness. It's not an overwhelming sweetness. And I feel as though poems of mine, or poems in general, have to operate on multiple levels in order to succeed as far as being able to touch a human being. So if a poem is just sweet, it becomes too simple. It's like, life is beautiful, blah, blah, blah. It becomes too easy to access it in a simple way. I feel like poems that are most honest may speak of beauty, may speak of sweetness, but they would do so in a way that's nuanced, layered, and therefore not naive,
So your poems are, aromatic, they are edible,
I think so, I hope so. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I like for the imagery of a poem to be accessible. So if I'm talking about hair, I want you to be able to see the color of it. I want you to be able perhaps to smell it. If I'm talking about a body, I want you to be able to imagine the smell of that neck or the texture of that skin, or the way the skin breathes.
What about flowers?
What about flowers? I'm a pretty city. I've been a city boy my whole life, a city and suburb kind of guy. So I can't say that I've had a lot of experience with flowers, but I like them. When they're around. I think I enjoy flowers more for their colors than anything. So I don't spend a lot of time necessarily touching flower petals, but I think they inject a nice infusion of color into.
People who watch this video, they will think, oh my God, this guy is having sex all day long. I have a good...
I don't think, it's not that I'm having sex all day long.
Or not even every day.
No, it's just that I like to remain open to physical experience, so whether that's...
So it happens in your mind?
Not just in my mind, because I feel like creativity is inherent.
Is this what you wanted?
Yeah, this is it. I feel like creativity is inherently a physical process. It's saying I have a feeling in me, and I want to take that feeling from my body and bring it out of my body in a way that allows others to understand it. So for me, a poem will begin as an idea, but for it to get written, it has to also become a feeling. And so for me to be a receptive human being physically just makes sense in the creative process, because obviously poems or whatever we create will have a certain amount of intellect in them, but I feel as though if a poem stays too deeply in the intellect, it loses some of its capacity to touch people, because poetry can convey philosophy, but it is not philosophy. I feel like poetry is meant to be a physical, emotional experience, and so my life therefore becomes a physical and emotional experience. And so it means that not everything is sex, but everything is sensual at least, or sexual at times.
At the beginning, it may sound that your poems are very visceral. It all
That's a
goes
good
through
word
the
for it.
body. At the same time, the truth is your poems are pure energy. And sexual energy is what keeps us. It is that sexuality that made everything, exist.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think you will ever marry?
It's not a decision I can make on my own. It requires at least one other human being, so I can't say that.
Would you like to?
I would say that I would like very much to love sincerely and intimately for as long as possible, whether that manifests as partnership with one person, whether it manifests as partnership with several people, whether it manifests as just having a whole lot of beautiful lovers for my whole life. All of that is okay, as long as I can feel myself loving, I can feel myself giving love, I can feel myself receiving love, and as long as that love is achieving for me some level of spiritual growth, as long as there's some sort of emotional and spiritual insight whenever I engage with love. It doesn't matter what form it takes. In my imagining, I imagine that having a lifelong partner or 2 or 3 lifelong partners would teach me more than not having those lifelong partners. But it's up to destiny, really. So we'll see.
So Brandon, you brought a few books here. Your favorite poets.
Some of them.
Some of them. You just mentioned Michael Ondaatje and.
Leonard Cohen.
Yes. So we'll do something different today. I would like you to talk a little bit about your own poems, but also do some poetry reading of Poesy to Love.
Okay. Earlier I talked about how Ondaatje is one of the poets who's influenced me the most. And I would say of his work, the particular poem that strikes me as having the greatest combination of clarity, desire, and sensuality, which are things that I value, is a poem of his called The Cinnamon Peeler. He has a collection of work also by that name, but this particular poem is one of my favorites of his. It goes like this. If I were a cinnamon peeler, I would ride your bed and leave the yellow bark dust on your pillow. Your breasts and shoulders would reek. You would never walk through markets without the profession of my fingers floating over you. The blind would stumble certain of whom they approach, though you might bathe under rain gutters, monsoon. Here on the upper thigh, at this smooth pasture, neighbor to your hair, or the crease that cuts your back, this ankle, you will be known amongst strangers as a cinnamon peeler's wife. I could hardly glance at you before marriage, never touch you, your keen-nosed mother, your rough brothers. I buried my hands in saffron, disguised them over smoking tar, helped the honey gatherers. When we swam once, I touched you in water, and our bodies remained free. You could hold me and be blind of smell. You climbed the bank and said, "This is how you touch other women." The grass cutter's wife, the lime burner's daughter, and you searched your arm for the missing perfume and knew, what good is it to be the lime burner's daughter left with no trace, as if not spoken to in the act of love, as if wounded without the pleasure of a scar. You touched your belly to my hands in the dry air and said, I am the cinnamon peeler's wife. Smell me. Yeah. So that poem has everything in it. It's sensuous. It is, for me, a poem essentially about how we go about conveying our desire, or not how, but just the presence of desire in one sensuous way, or one sensuous scenario in which desire was strongly conveyed. And desire means a lot to me, spiritually and as a poet. I try to keep as much desire as possible in my body, because I feel like creative energy and sexual energy are the same energy. So the more of one I have, the more of the other I'll have. So people who know me well won't be surprised to hear that. But yeah, it means a lot to me to be in desire, to be in love as frequently as possible, because to be in love gives me both the content and the drive, like the natural urge to express myself. So yeah.
Sexuality for you, it sounds to me that it goes beyond a mere sexual urge. It is spiritual.
Yeah, I would
say
so.
Philosophical.
Yeah, I would say so. I think I'm a naturally in the spiritual sense, I'm a romantic sort of human being, and so if you take that romantic sensibility, marry it with a deep faith in magic, and then also marry it with like my natural inclination to be like a sensuous person, then of course sexuality becomes a spiritual pursuit. I mean, a physical necessity, but also a spiritual necessity, because I feel like, sexuality that is loving becomes the most creative of all acts, because if you make love, you will eventually create life. Like very physically. That's where human beings come from, and so. If my art is a reflection of my engagement with life, then it just makes sense that I would, want to be sexual and want to be engaged with that which is life-giving and life-sustaining. And I believe sexuality to be both of those things, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it does. Mm-hmm. Without sexuality, probably nothing.
Yeah.
would exist.
Yeah, nothing exists.
What about Leonard Cohen? What would you like to read?
What would I like to read from Leonard Cohen? There are many things I could read of his work, because I've been sitting with his work a lot. I've been letting his voice influence my voice. I don't necessarily believe in stealing, but I believe in understanding another's work such that when it comes time to write your own work, whatever it is you enjoy about that poet's work naturally expresses itself in your own. Let me find the one that I'm looking for. Yeah, this is actually the first poem in this book. I like it for many of the same reasons that I like the Andache poem that I just read. It's called Poem. I heard of a man who says words so beautifully that if he only speaks their name, women give themselves to him. If I am dumb beside your body, while silence blossoms like tumors on my lips, it is because I hear a man climb the stairs and clear his throat outside our door. Yeah, I enjoy that one. I could also... there's so many poems in this book that I enjoy. I might need... what is that one? Yeah, it would take me some time to find it. I'll find it another time. But there are some others in this book that I really enjoy.
What about this one?
This is one of my favorite writers, and probably one of the people who I had an experience with her work that showed me that I was truly passionate about poetry. You know, I had written my own poetry for many years before I got to university. I attended Carleton University for 5 years before leaving. And so I think it was in my second year. You know, I was an English major, so it means that I was doing a lot of reading because I was being asked to do a lot of reading. You know, but her work was one of the first examples of me searching out work that I enjoyed just for the pure enjoyment of it. And I was very, very excited to go to the library and sit with her. Her name is Dion Brand. She's originally from, I believe, Tobago. She's been living in Toronto for at least, since the 70s at least. This book is called Chronicles. I think it is a collection of her first 3 works. Let's see, what can I read you from this one? I like Dion Brand because, well, I like her for many reasons. And not everything that I like about her will come across in whatever poem I read to you today, but what she has is an incredible sharpness. Like she is, the sharpness of her intellect is so sharp. It's almost fierce. You know, like reading her is an experience because I feel like she doesn't compromise anything. Her voice is incredibly strong. The poems I'm going to read to you are winter epigrams. And I believe these are from like the early parts of her career. And I can tell because these poems are mostly about being a person who has recently come to Canada. And, you know, it can be rather alarming to experience your first winter or your first few winters in this country. So she wrote a bunch of short poems about her experience of winter. I don't even know which one to read first, but I just like them for their wit and their directness. They just have numbers. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
They're not titled. They just have numbers, and
Sure.
there's 30 or 40 of them in this book.
How about number 6?
Number 6. Yeah, that's a good one. Sick song for sick leaves. Every September, about the first week, a smell of infirmary clasps the air. It is a warm lake, like an old hand, trying to calm a cold city. I also enjoy number 8. Cold is not skiing or any other foolhardiness in snow. Yeah. I've done a lot of sitting with these poems as well. Earlier we were talking about like the influence that my particular Caribbean heritage has had on me. And so reading poems from a Caribbean person talking about her experience of her early experiences of Canada and how winter, in my opinion, is beautiful but can also be an assault on the senses. It reminds me of things that my grandparents have said, things that my mother has said. It reminds me of, my grandfather looking out the kitchen window and the backyard garden is, just full of snow. And I think, and this is me assuming on my grandfather's behalf, but I think what I always took from those experiences or from those moments of just watching my grandfather look out onto the world, I got a sense of like how many lives we can live, in one life, and how time really passes. Like, so in the distillation of just watching my grandfather look outside the kitchen window onto sheets and sheets of snow, it made me think about like the spectrum of his entire life and like how far looking out a kitchen window in Toronto is from some of the other things that he's known in his life, sunshine and beaches and sugar cane and the smell of fresh fruit and herding cows for his mother, like all these things that are very, very far away from the suburban experience of winter in Canada, which is what he was experiencing for most of my upbringing. So poems like that, and there are other examples as well, but just the raw experience of like poem number 31 in this book says it very, very concretely, Montreal is so beautiful. Winter is unfortunate. It's like, yes, there's much beauty in this country. There's much to be experienced, perhaps much to be loved about this place, but there are some things in it as well that are just purely unfortunate, and they're unfortunate because they're unavoidable, As my grandparents aged, and I think it's just a general fact of aging, harsh weather becomes more difficult to sustain in the body and on the body. So I can very clearly remember, me as a younger person, me being, 16, 17, not understanding the full spectrum of why they're complaining, standing outside in winter and be like, oh, it's not so cold, and they're like, man, it's freezing out here. And it's because there's something unavoidable about winter's grasp, winter's hold, and I think that's part of the reason so many people struggle with it. Is because they want to struggle against it. But if you're being embraced by something that's bigger than you, even if you want to move out of it, for a moment you're going to have to submit to it first. And so that's my usual approach in winter, is to submit first, and then whatever perceptions, whatever beauty and subtlety I can find will come from that submission. But without the submission, it's just fighting.
I think that you submit in winter, you submit in love, you submit in a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Well, I feel that you are drawing your energy from all these submissions.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that's really well said. Yeah. What can I say about that? I think it's just part of me being on a spiritual path, understanding that most of what is influencing my life is much, much, much bigger than me. And so anything that I receive from this life, any beauty that comes back to me in this life will be a result of me giving myself to certain paths, to certain things that I believe are larger than me, more wise than me, more noble than me, but also are in me, So as a poet, what I'm doing is expressing those larger forces. And as a human being, what I'm doing is studying them for the purpose of living out my destiny in a way that's authentic or in a way that does justice to my purpose. So with that comes the desire to submit to love, and the desire to submit to beauty, the desire to submit to whatever divine wisdom I feel in a particular moment, because these are all things that are much larger than me, but all things that are of me and of not of me, but in me. Sorry, yeah, they're all things that are in me, and so it kind of behooves me to give those things as much space inside my body and inside my consciousness as I can, because it means that my life will be richer for it, and my poems will have more insight in them.